It's the dramatic end to an American true crime saga.
When our loving, tenacious, and beautiful daughter's life was stolen by a cowardly rapist, the life as we knew it was gone forever.
Paul chose to take a life, my sister Kristin's life, a beautiful life, and he must now pay.
More than 25 years after 19-year-old Kristin Smart vanished without a trace.
People had seen her. They kind of knew where she had been. And then suddenly she's gone. Disappears.
A lot of people I've spoken to think of Kristin almost like their own daughter. That's every parent's worst nightmare.
The convicted killer, Paul Flores, finally sentenced to 25 years to life after seeming to evade responsibility for decades.
What the sentencing will provide is accountability. Mr. Flores, you have been a cancer to society.
Tonight, a closer look at the winding road to justice for Kristin. From the shocking details of the crime,
the alleged bloodbath ring underneath his home,
to the newly released video capturing the moment Flores emerged as the prime suspect.
But some of the things you're telling us aren't adding up.
How the family's long fight.
There is no answer for us that's acceptable except finding Kristin.
And a viral podcast.
I realized not a lot of people know the full details.
Helped investigators crack the case and the mysteries that still remain. Memorial Day weekend 1996. Mariah Carey's hit Always Be My Baby was blasting from every FM radio.
It's much worse than you think.
And the first Mission Impossible movie was breaking box office records on its opening weekend. That spring, Kristin Smart was a 19-year-old freshman at California Polytechnic State University, known as Cal Poly to locals.
So Kristin was your normal college-aged freshman, and she was very close with her family. She liked to surf, she loved being outdoors, she loved the beach.
What can you describe to us about Kristin that you've learned through her parents?
Whatever she chose to do, she could have probably achieved it.
On May 25th, Kristin headed to an off-campus house party. There, she met fellow student Paul Flores.
Later that night, she was found very, very intoxicated, face down in the front lawn of this house. Eventually, one person did get her up and began to walk her home with another girl. And then that's when Paul Flores came and was like, hey, I'll walk them home.
Flores had a reputation on campus.
His reputation, allegedly at Cal Poly, was that he was Creepy Paul, or another name for him was Chester the Molester, according to court testimony and documents.
But authorities say Kristin never made it home. She was last seen walking with Flores.
He admits he was walking with her, but he says he left her and he could see her walking towards her dorm.
Her backpack, identification, all sitting untouched in her dorm room. It takes 3 days after Kristin is last seen for a formal report to be filed.
The first few days are critical in a missing persons investigation. Each hour makes a difference.
2 days later, Flores is brought in for an interview with investigators.
How much did you have to drink that night, Paul?
Too much.
Flores, at first, cooperative.
It may come down to this, but I'm wondering, are you familiar with the term polygraph? Lie detector? That sort of thing?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Would you be willing to take one if necessary?
Yeah.
But a month later, Flores appears agitated when authorities question him for a second time.
Can we give you a polygraph?
I told you I have to talk to my parents and stuff.
Well, if you're telling us the truth, why do you have to talk to your parents to take a polygraph?
Because I do.
He knows he would fail the polygraph. I have had suspects in murder cases say, early on in the interview, saying, sure, I'll take a polygraph. None of them ever had any intention of taking the polygraph.
Flores also seemingly caught in a lie. After Kristin's disappearance, he'd been seen with a black eye.
When the last person to have seen the victim alive has a huge black eye, that's a big deal.
Last time we talked to you, you had a black eye.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you tell us?
I told you I got it playing basketball.
That's right. And where did you get it?
In my car.
Well, no. Well, why was it so hard for you to tell us that you got that black eye hitting the string?
It didn't really matter. Oh, it's not really lies fed. It's so minute. It's not. Well, I guess you can call it a little white lie.
He crosses his arms. He also sticks his hands up into the sleeves of his t-shirt. Those are all anxiety-induced behaviors. They don't tell you a person's guilty or innocent, but it tells you that you've hit a nerve with them.
Flores quickly emerged as a primary suspect, but even with mounting suspicion against him, there wasn't enough to make an arrest.
Just having been the last person to have been with her and giving an inconsistent statement about an injury isn't enough for an arrest.
He kept living his life, even being asked in this video from June 1996 about Kristin's disappearance.
Hey, Paul, do you have any information on that missing girl? What'd you do with her?
Meanwhile, over the years, Kristin's family continued to pursue him as their daughter's killer.
Well, we're just looking. He'll come out soon.
I want Paul Flores to always remember that our daughter Kristin is still missing. And as long as he can go about his life and be uninterrupted, that's an additional pain for me. I want him to always remember.
So what makes this, I think, remarkable is the tenacity of the Smart family. Just going like energizing bunnies to hold this guy responsible.
For years, the investigation seemed to go stale. To this day, Kristin's body has never been found. But in 2019, a podcast called Your Own Backyard thrust Kristin's case back into the spotlight.
I'm going to try to learn everything I can about Kristin Smart and what happened to her, in the only way that I know how, by talking to people.
Created by first-time podcaster Chris Lambert, who was just 8 years old when Kristin disappeared, Your Own Backyard quickly went viral.
There have been a number of big podcasts lately of either unsolved or controversial cases where the fact that people were talking about it led to more information coming forward.
A newly released wiretapped call between Paul and his mom revealing they were following the podcast too.
The other thing I need you to do is to start listening to the podcast. I need you to listen to everything they say so we could punch holes in it. Wherever we can punch holes, maybe we can't. You're the one that can tell me.
In 2021, a huge break in the case. Officials searching the home of Flores' father, Ruben, making a horrifying discovery.
And they find blood there. It changes the game.
That's where the key evidence was really found, which was the alleged bloodbath ring underneath his home. Law enforcement tested the soil found underneath his deck, and it tested positive for human blood, but there was not enough substance to test for DNA.
Nearly 25 years after Kristin went missing, Paul Flores is arrested and charged with murder. His father is also arrested and charged as an accessory after the fact. Both men plead not guilty.
People in the county celebrated. They told us that it was such a relief that they finally were going to see justice, that Paul was finally going to pay for his crimes.
Flores was tried alongside his father, with separate juries deciding the fate of each man. Ruben ultimately found not guilty on his charges. Paul found guilty in October of 2022.
When Paul's verdict was read that he was guilty, there was a sigh of relief. Denise, Kristin's mom, started crying tears of joy, and Stan smiled and hugged her.
And Paul Flores maintains his innocence. What is your reaction to that?
I'm sure if you took any sociopath, be happy to tell you they're innocent. This guy's guilty. He's been found guilty. And I totally disregard anything he's ever said.
Today, Kristin Smart's family addressing the court, their relief and resolve on display.
We cajoled, pushed, we called, we begged, we never gave up.
While still holding on to the hope of receiving full closure.
Paul took her life and hid her body. We will never rest until Kristin is properly laid to rest by her family. This fight is far from over.